ASEAN Investment Framework for Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management, AIF, HFSLM, has been introduced to the global community through COP28 UNFCCC. COP stands for Conference of Parties, where the United Nations member states have a meeting annually in dealing with climate change and make a plan for climate actions within the guidelines of the UNFCCC. The 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference was held at the Expo City in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, from November 30th to December 12th, 2023. During COP28, AIF was showcased in a panel discussion slot entitled Moving Forward: Climate Finance with ASEAN Investment Framework for Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management. Here's a snapshot during the session.
Our hope by 2030 in terms of the investment framework is that it's fully implemented with multiple partners across all sectors, and that we have many different economic and financial sectors all working together to implement, and that we will have no more transboundary haze, and it will be seen as something of the past. So I hope really by 2030 we achieve that.
In Thailand Pavilion, AIF was showcased in a panel discussion slot entitled Enabling Low-Emission, Haze-Free Land Management in Mekong Region. Here's a snapshot during the session.
To support and engagement with all relevant stakeholders to increase awareness and preparedness on transboundary haze event within and across the sector and discipline, I call upon all of us to improve and strengthen our cooperation and coordination for a concerted response of the authority, community, private sector in the possible event of haze and forest fire through the multiple stakeholder engagement and collaboration investment.
Now, as you know, peatlands is covering approximately 3% of the world's surface. But if you think about the mitigation potential it can offer when it comes to carbon storage in soil, up to 30%.
When you leave the room, and that is to promote or inform your colleagues about this and ask them for engagement in this process, to try to bring together different stakeholders from private sector, public sector, investors and others to address this very severe challenge of the fires and the transboundary haze in both the Mekong region where we're discussing.
Meanwhile, during the official side event, AIF was showcased in a panel discussion slot entitled Investing in Haze-Free Sustainable Land Management in Southeast Asia. Here's a snapshot during the session.
Statistics about the reduction in deforestation, which has been massive over the last few, last 5 years. So there has been, as I said, 50 to 60, I think 65% in the last study over the last few years, and that continues to come down. So we think that the narrative is slowly changing, but for sure not quickly enough.
And now the government have adopted regulation along the lines of what the industry did. So I think that is a very great success story. Unfortunately, it's done a maybe lousy job in communicating to the global audience, and still people in the mindset, as often we do, it's something we heard before. It gets to be the bad reputation you can't get rid of. But I think that's something very important that we need to recognize and communicate.
The investment framework, supported by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, through MAHFSA program, aims to build multi-stakeholder partnerships and leverage on initial target of USD 1.5 billion pipeline funding until 2030 to combat large-scale fire-related issues in forest, peatland, and agricultural sectors by offering viable alternative to support both social and economy.